That ball you want to take, that there's a mistake.
And what do you know that every scout and coach on earth does not?
I'm thinking. I want total control of my team. I want to be able to recruit anybody that I want. No interference.
My word is my bond.
I want it in writing.
Missed it by that much.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Steelers Sanctuary Draft Spotlight. I'm here with Bob Quinn. I'm Dave Rivero. How's everybody doing today? Bob, what's going on?
We're just sitting back waiting on Uncle Aaron to make a decision.
Man, I got to give you credit. The last podcast you said this is going to take till the end of March, and God damn it, you might be right at this point. I mean, there is no indication that he's in any hurry to make a decision at this point. It's as bad as it gets. And R.I.P. to your Cooper Rush dreams of coming to the Steelers.
I know.
He's signing with the Baltimore Ravens. Your boy's our enemy now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, let's just hope there's no fighting Cooper Rushes to refer to this upcoming season. I mean, it's kind of bad. You know, we were talking about it before the show. We went back and looked up Brett Favre. He waited until August to sign with the Vikings after he left the Jets, back when he moved from the Jets to the Vikings. Now, that being said, I don't think it's going to take that long, but kind of like I said the other day,
my head will explode if it's July and they still don't have Aaron Rodgers. I think a lot of people would be like, oh my God.
Yeah, I don't hate the idea of Mason as our backup plan. I think if they're smart in the draft, I think a rookie can come in and kind of push him a little bit. Mason wasn't very good in Tennessee last year, and I know a lot of people are pointing to those last three games. And, he's got this special connection with George Pickens. If George Pickens is still on the roster, and does that translate to DK Metcalf?
Yeah, if Mason Rudolph's a starting quarterback, you're tanking, basically, because you're not going anywhere. You might get to 500. I mean, Mike Tomlin might be able to wave his magic wand and get us to, just above 500. But, man, my expectation level goes right through the floor if Mason Rudolph's starting quarterback. That's just a botched offseason.
I say bring back Duck if that happens.
Yeah,
if we could pry him away from Laney Wilson's backstage parties.
Oh God! All right, let's go over a few of it pro day season before we get into that, Bob. We'll do a couple pro day stuff.
Okay.
So far, Tomlin's been to 2 pro days, Georgia and Clemson. Not a lot of Georgia has first round talent, but they got 2 edge rushers that are going to go before the Steelers pick. And then, I don't know, Malachi Starks, that's about it after that. Terrell Austin did put the defensive backs through drills at that pro day.
Yes.
Is there any world where you see Malachi Starks being the first pick for the Steelers?
Not in the first round. No, I could see if he was maybe still available in the third. I mean,
I don't think he goes that far. Oh, maybe. I don't know.
It's hard to tell. I mean, he did okay at the combine. I mean, if I'm going to pick a safety in the first round, it's going to be Eamon Morey out of South Carolina because I think he's a unicorn physically. Malachi Starks is a good player. He's not a transcendent enough talent as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
For the Steelers to go safety in the first round.
One other interesting note from the pro days from this past week, Zach Azzani did go to Tennessee, and there's a receiver there, Dante Thornton, who I know is on your skill position list. I'll let you go through it, but I'll give you the basics. He's 6'5" and ran the second fastest 40 at the combine. So that's one to keep an eye on. I don't know. What round you thinking him? 3rd, 4th, 5th?
He was projected as a day 3 pick. I don't think he helped himself as much as Jaden Higgins did when he's jumping up into the first round. But you got to figure with that size and speed. If you follow our draft profiles and the podcast, I love big wide receivers who are fast, and you don't get much faster than this guy at 6'5". So
6'5" is ridiculous.
Yeah, I love this kid. Actually, he's faster. The only guy who's 6'4" and taller, who's run even a comparable time that I can think of in really the last 30 years is Calvin Johnson. I'm not putting that expectation on this kid.
No.
But 6'5" and that fast, that's a very special skill set. If he was around in round 3, I don't know that I could pass him up.
Yeah, that's unicorn type athletic traits with that size. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Just to give the people a heads up, this week coming up, March 18th and 19th is Oregon, Big 12 gets all lumped together for their pro days. Oregon, South Carolina, and Virginia. I would think Tomlin would go to maybe South Carolina with all those prospects. Like you said, Eamon Wera, TJ Sanders. South Carolina's got a lot of draftable prospects. The Big 12 one goes on for 2 days. Obviously, you get to see a lot of players at that, so maybe Tomlin pops up at that one. Where do you think he goes on Monday? Big 12 or South Carolina is the choices. He won't go to Oregon. They don't go West Coast.
I'm okay. I know they don't. They almost have to go to the Big 12
Right.
because of the depth of talent. But man, South Carolina has got some really intriguing.
They got some interesting guys. Yeah.
Eamon Wera. I love Raheem Sanders as a day 3 pick as a running back. Although there's talk now he may be climbing into day 2. I also, if you've watched my mock drafts on Tuesdays, everybody knows how much I love Tonka Hemingway. Again, just a teeny bit undersized, but he's definitely a late day 3 pick, and I think he's got upside. So I'd be interested to go there, but I don't think you can pass up going, because let's face it, the Steelers don't scout the West Coast, so this is probably the only chance they'll get to see Oregon guys live.
They'll send Mike Bruner out there. He's the West Coast guy that Tomlin won't go. It's between South Carolina. Big 12 is 2 days, so maybe they go to South Carolina. Well, no, actually, because March 19th is Alabama, and the Steelers go to Alabama every year. So I would be shocked if Mike Tomlin is in Alabama. And then March 21st to round out the week is Michigan and Florida State. He probably goes to Michigan because they always go to Michigan. There was a streak that was broken last year where the Steelers' first-round pick was from a school that the Steelers visited. Mike Tomlin, Colbert, Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan for like 25 years straight. And then last year, I think, was a fluke because Fuatanu fell a lot further than they thought. It would have been interesting to see if Fuatanu didn't fall. It probably would have been a school they visited, but we'll never know. So that's something to keep an eye on. When you see where Tomlin goes, that usually means the first-round pick's coming from there. We'll see. And one more thing before we get to our top 10 list there is the guys they've had in so far. It's kind of interesting. They have 30 official visits. We're about 10 in. Tyler Shook, DJ Giddens, Dylan Sampson, who we both like a lot. Bashul Tootin, I'm getting used to that name. Jalen Noel, Savion Williams, Wyatt Millam, West Virginia. That's a local visit. That doesn't count. JJ Pegs, and Yaya Black, who's a massive defensive tackle for Iowa. Those are the guys that have been in so far that we know. Anybody on that list stand out to you? Tyler Shook is interesting.
He's interesting. I know when we talk about Todd McShay's board here in a minute, he's climbed into late first round. I was telling you in prep, I really feel like I'm getting 2022 vibes off all these scouting reports when it was, Pickett will go number 1 and Malik Willis will be in the first round and Matt Corral and Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder, these guys. And then, Kenny Pickett went off the board at 21 when he fell to the Steelers, or 21, 22, I forget which one. And then we didn't see a guy get picked for 3 rounds. I mean, and I'm getting that vibe off of guys are getting artificially inflated in a very weak quarterback draft. I like Shock, and if we got him on day 3 or like the 4th round, I'd be totally happy. Being that we don't have a second round pick, I don't think we can take him in the 3rd round. Yeah, I know you don't think he'd be there. We'll see. There's guys I like on day 3 who I think, as far as I'm concerned, it's 1 Cam Ward, skip a lot, Shedeur Sanders, still a first round talent, number 2. And then these guys 3 through 10, just throw them in a hat. They'd all be nice day 3 picks. I think you're making a huge mistake if you take these guys in the first 3 rounds.
See, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I think it's Ward by himself. I think Sanders, Dart, and Shuck are the next grouping, and then the rest of them are all throw them in a hat. I think, you know how I feel about Jackson Dart, and the Shuck, man, if he wasn't injured 3 times, might he be the top 5 pick with Ward? Might they be battling it out? He wouldn't have been in school this long, obviously. He would have come out 2 years ago. But
Right.
aside from that, he's got all the talent. He's got a big arm. They say maybe the biggest arm in the draft. Good processor, they say. I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, our man Danny here's got a good point. I mean, I don't know that Mason Rudolph would be my first choice, but I mean, that being said, if Mason's our quarterback for the first 5 or 6 games and he plays really good, then okay, great. Maybe he's the next miracle Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield story. I don't think so, but
I don't think so either.
But that being said, don't read too much into those last 3 games he played because he didn't look really good in the Buffalo game. And if you watched him at all in Tennessee last year, he looked really bad. So yeah, could they catch lightning in a bottle and get lucky? Yes, just reeks of desperation to me. Mike Tomlin didn't want to do this. I mean, this has somebody
what happened to Mike Tomlin wanting mobility at starting quarterback. I mean, Mason Rudolph's not mobile, and even if they bring in Aaron Rodgers, he can move a little bit, but he's not the kind of mobility they're talking about. They say one thing with quarterbacks and they do another. I don't.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's face it, they had mobility with Justin Fields and they threw it away.
Yeah.
But that being said, let's be honest, Mike Tomlin doesn't want his quarterbacks to throw the ball any further than a halfback toss.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's sad but true. Just to show that I'm not a total Kevin Colbert homer. The man did say he had a first-round grade on Mason Rudolph, which is, I mean, from that point to now, their quarterback evaluation has been probably the worst in the league, or right up there. Them thinking Mason Rudolph was good, even a first-round, second-round talent is terrible. Them thinking Kenny Pickett was a first-round caliber quarterback is awful. Thinking that Russell Wilson could do anything for them is terrible. It's been a disaster since you could probably point to the Ben Roethlisberger draft because, at 15 years after that, they didn't really need a quarterback, so they were kind of spoiled. But they haven't. It's been a train wreck.
We've kind of talked about it before. It's a Steeler tradition. I mean, it goes all the way. The history of the franchise is riddled with bizarre quarterback decisions. You have a roster with Len Dawson, Johnny Unitas, Earl Morrall, and Jack Kemp in the 50s. You know how many of those guys stayed around and played meaningful games for the Steelers? None. Last I checked, 3 of those guys are in the Hall of Fame, and one of them's an MVP, the guy who didn't make the Hall of Fame. So they do all that to get Bobby Lane, who was a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he was on the second half downside of his career. And then let's just be honest. I mean, Terry Bradshaw came from a small school. He wasn't.
They almost ran him out of town too. There was a touch and go for a while there where they were going to get rid of him.
Yeah, and as much if you were around there in that area, Terry Hanratty, Joe Gilliam, all pretty good guys. But I mean, ultimately, it took Al Davis. Terry Bradshaw asked for a trade to the Raiders. He went to Al Davis, said, "Please trade for me." And Al Davis was like, "Where the hell are you going to fit in on our roster? I got Stabler, I got Blanda, I got LaMonica." I was like, "I got no room for you." And then he went to Nolan and said, "Hey, man, put Bradshaw in, he'll win for you." And Al Davis likes to take credit for the Steelers' dynasty with that decision.
If any of that's true, he is responsible for it.
Ben was the 3rd quarterback off the board. They fell into Ben.
Yeah, they did fall into Ben.
Now, that being said, if they'd got, I don't know if they would have won Super Bowls with Eli. I think he needed the discipline of Coughlin. Phillip Rivers would have been an interesting one. Actually, that's the guy I was hoping they would get. But when he went off the board, Ben was viewed as a project. So,
small school guy,
Yeah, they kind of fell into Ben. They needed a quarterback. They were 6-10. Ben was the only guy left, so they took him.
And if you believe any of the lore from that draft, is they weren't even convinced that they say Kyle wanted to guard Andrews, I think it was, that ended up in Atlanta. So they weren't even sold on a quarterback at that point. They still thought, who was the quarterback at the time for the Steelers?
Which year?
After
Tommy Gunn, my favorite.
Tommy Gunn,
my
yeah.
favorite
They were still
Steelers-
convinced they could win with him. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this quarterback thing, the history of this team, and now we're in a blender where we're going to get, I hate to say if we're lucky, but if we're fortunate, we're going to get Aaron Rodgers. And then do you really see him lasting more than this season? Well, you're going to get 2 seasons out of him? So there's going to be another starting quarterback next year. This will be what? That'll be 6 in 6 years to start the season?
The thing about Rodgers, and not to beat it down too much, the thing about Rodgers, because I know we're going to talk about it tomorrow. Okay, so if you get him, you might, if things fell right and you got the right seed, you might win a playoff game, maybe even 2. Again, only if the seeding falls right. Maybe somebody, Kansas City, Buffalo gets hurt. Okay, maybe. All right. But it's either going to go spectacular or it's going to flame out so badly that, let's face it, Aaron Rodgers got the Jets fired. Everybody who's made any decisions for the Jets is gone. And he kind of got Mike McCarthy fired, and they went to LaFleur, and LaFleur kind of reined him in a little bit. So, that's the other, as far as I'm concerned, upside. If it goes spectacularly bad, I think you have to totally reevaluate the decision-making. And the word is that it's Mike Tomlin driving this decision.
Yeah,
so
that's what we've heard.
If he puts his name on it and says, I want Aaron, and I don't disagree with the sentiment. You just got to, from a fan standpoint, you just got to relax and wait. But if it goes badly, now you put your name on Kenny Pickett and you put your name on Aaron Rodgers, kind of put your name on Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, but you didn't sign them to contracts. I mean, at that point, you've got to take a long look. Of course, the problem is Art doesn't give a fuck. And he'll, as long as I'm playing in Ireland, they win the Ireland game, they can go.
That's all he cares about. Honest to God, that's all he cares about.
Yep.
Unfortunately for the Steelers, it's bad timing again. If Russell Wilson would have worked out to the point where they re-signed him, then they could have gone through this season and gotten to next season where it's a much deeper quarterback draft. Unfortunately, He didn't work out, and we're back to, like you bring up that Kenny Pickett draft. This is a weak quarterback draft. As much as I like Jackson Dart, I don't know if he's a great fit. We talked before we got on about how like a Miami or the Rams would be great fits for him. He can sit a year, learn under a great quarterback and offensive system, which we do not have here. And I think eventually if he goes to one of those teams, he goes on to be a very good quarterback. Here, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
After him, I'm assuming Shador's gone before they draft. So after that, it's that year all over again. It's the Kenny Pickett's draft all over again, where it's Chucks and the Ohio State kid, and none of them worth drafting. Don't even bother.
Only good quarterback in that draft was the last one picked. So,
yep. And Chuck's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we were talking before, he's got the best, or maybe the second best arm in the draft. He seems to be a very good, processor, and he's got everything. But he's 27. He's missed 3 full seasons with injury. And I get it. It's bone breaks. It's not. But that takes its toll. I mean, do you want to risk a first-round pick on that guy?
No, I wouldn't. There's only 2 guys I would pick in the first round. We have Cam Ward. We have no shot at.
Yeah, no shot.
And when we get into our list, I would pick Shador only if he fell. Only if he fell to us. I wouldn't move up not even 1 spot to get him. And I might even consider trading back to see if he falls back to us to get my second round pick back.
Let's spend 5 minutes on trading back. I think that's the best idea that the Steelers could possibly do, is trade back, try to get that second round pick back, or at least have 2/3, try to fill in some of these roster holes, because Bob, they didn't really, I don't know. Do you think they didn't do anything at defensive tackle? So that's a major need. Corner, I guess Darius Slay fills corner. A slot corner still, I don't know if that kid Eccles is going to be the slot corner, and that's their answer.
I think they'll get a slot corner in the draft. I think there's guys in the middle rounds who you could get who would be interesting fits to compete with Beanie Bishop. Let's see what if Beanie takes a step forward.
They have absolutely no depth on offensive line. None. They have 2. Who is it? Ryan McCullum, who they re-signed, and they have the 7th round pick from a couple years ago.
Spencer Anderson, who I like.
Who's okay, but you need 2 more bodies at least. I know free agency's not over, but there's still a lot of holes in this team. So to draft a quarterback in one of these holes without a second round pick,
Yeah.
you're asking for a lot of trouble. So we'll see. All right, let's get to our top 10 skill position guys that we picked.
Do we want to look at Todd McShay first?
Oh, let's do Todd McShay first. I'm sorry. Yes, let's do Todd McShay.
Okay, so Todd McShay's top 100. We'll talk about the risers and fallers here a little bit, but when we get into his on the next slide with the top 100, we're only going to talk about skill position players. So when you see this and say, "Hey, where's Shamar Stewart or these other guys on the next slide?" It's because we're only talking about skill position.
Yeah, we're trying to keep this as a skill positions thing because it's something the Steelers still really need. Looking at his new arrivals, 93 DJ Giddens. I love that guy. I think I've made that clear. I'd have him a lot higher up than 93 than Todd McShay's got here. I think for me, he's running back 3 or 4, probably 4.
I
really
can
like
see
him.
4.
I really like him.
Well, you know
Who's
what?
your top 3? Genty, Hampton, 1, 2, right?
I am not as big on Genty as everybody else is. He's in my top 3. Hampton is my number 1.
Okay.
Genty
I can
is
see
number 2. And right now, I've got Dylan Sampson as number 3.
Dylan Sampson's up there. He had a great pro day, ran 4.4s, so that and he impressed a lot of people.
Expected, though. Yeah, he was expected to be 4.3s, so a little slower than expected.
Somber has joined the chat. Welcome, Somber. He's our regular guy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I got to put Quinshon Judkins somewhere in there too. Running 4.4 at his size, and he's a top 5 back for me too. So I think
I still like Henderson over him. I don't dislike. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if we got Quinshon Judkins. I like Trevion Henderson a little better.
So let's put it this way. I think those 7 guys are a tier. Yes. I think it's Genty, Hampton, Giddens, Judkins, Henderson. Who am I missing?
Judkins, Henderson, Sampson.
Sampson, I forgot. And those 6 guys are a tier. Any one of those 6 guys, I would be thrilled with Steelers.
I feel like Giddens is still that next tier. Still very good.
Yeah,
not. Hey, I didn't want that guy. I don't think he's quite as good as those other guys. I think he's in the Tootin, Damian Martinez tier.
Yeah, I think he's a little better than that. He's the only guy that they have any prayer of getting when they select in the 3rd round. Those other 6 guys I mentioned before, they're going to be long gone. So, right. Do they go running back 1st round, do you think? Or do you think they wait?
There's only one running back I'd pick in the 1st round.
Hampton.
Because if you watch my profile on him, Hampton is Najee Harris 2.0 upgraded. He's much
Born
faster.
To be a Steeler.
Yes.
Born to be a Steeler. 100%.
Much faster, loves contact, but when he busts the line, he's also better at identifying the hole. He's not great at it. I mean, he still has a little bit of in college. He's a cannonball runner, kind of like Jalen is. If the play's supposed to go here, a lot of times he just barrels in there and he'll take his 2 to 3 yards, which was always my quibble with Najee. You're supposed to be this big, strong back. Sometimes 2nd and 7 isn't a bad down. It's a hell of a lot better than 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 11.
I agree. All right, let's look at the rest of his risers. Armand Membu is going to be long gone by the time we select. Shamar Stewart, we talked about him last Sunday. I like him a lot. I don't know if he's going to be around. Matthew Golden.
That 40 times. He's the number 1 wide receiver now.
He is. And he's my wide receiver 1 too. I would be ecstatic. I've heard a couple people say the Steelers are out of the wide receiver business in this draft till maybe later on, till day 3.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. Hey.
Here's the point I heard, and I kind of agree with it. How many balls is wide receiver 3 going to catch? How many plays is wide receiver 3 going to play? When they're in 2 tight ends so much, and you've got 2 ball hogs and DK Metcalf and George Pickens.
Well, that's the question.
Is Pickens still here?
Is Pickens still here? I know
100%.
A lot of people are starting to buzz that, hey, you cannot wait till he asks for a trade. If he asks for a trade, you ain't getting nothing. So forget it. You got to pull the trigger, or you've got to convince him. And honestly, the Mason move might have been that. Hey, look, our worst case, George, is Mason, and you had arguably your 3 best games of your career with Mason. So maybe that was a step to appease and tell DK, hey man, worst case scenario, we got Mason, throws a nice deep ball, then fine, we'll still be able to get you the ball a bunch too. It'll be interesting. If they trade Pickens, I think Matthew Golden becomes very interesting because it's a different skill set than DK Metcalf. Honestly, I probably would still take Jaden Higgins. I've been on him. If you've been watching, I've been on him since the beginning of the process. Some of the experts are starting to come around and see that, hey, this kid is a first-round talent who we were going to be able to get on day 2. We ain't going to be able to get him on day 2 anymore. So if we traded back and traded Pickens and picked up a second, wouldn't hate Jaden Higgins as our late first-round pick.
Yeah, if they trade Pickens, wide receiver gets back into play. But if they don't, I think we might be waiting a while. Sommer makes a good point. They're trying to win now. They'd keep Pickens for a season. I agree with that, Sommer. But what if Pickens starts making trouble? Says he wants to get paid, and they don't have a 5th-year option on George Pickens, so this is his last season. And if anyone thinks that George Pickens is going to go quietly into the next year without a contract, that doesn't seem like George Pickens to me. He's going to raise hell.
And Jamal, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. If you've watched our podcast at all, you know how much of a George Pickens fan I am. But the bottom line is you got the same skill set on both sides. Now, I think it would be wildly impressive if we could keep those two together. The problem is I don't think Pickens and Kaboli and a lot of other people have said this. Pickens is not going to be a good soldier with no contract. Now, maybe somebody talks sense into him, and according to Kaboli, nobody can talk sense to George Pickens but George Pickens. Maybe he realizes, hey, Deontay Johnson screwed up his career totally by being an idiot. And if we could keep him and he'd play good soldier all year, I'm all about it. I would love it. I love George Pickens. He's one of my favorite Steelers. But
same.
You got to be realistic here and say no contract, no matter what, you ain't re-signing him. There's no way you're re-signing him. So you got to get what you can. It's kind of like TJ. I love TJ, but at this point, he's not doing you any good. He could rebuild the franchise. The problem is that do we really want to trade TJ away with draft picks with how we're currently drafting? So I get both sides of that argument. It's just I would love to keep George Pickens, but I realistically don't think it's going to happen.
Jamal says, pay the man and throw him the daggone ball. I agree with you, but then you got to remember, you just signed DK Metcalf for $30 million a season. He's going to want the ball. And that's a guy you got under contract and you want to keep happy. So who are you going to throw the ball to? George Pickens is on the last year of his deal. They'll throw the ball at both of them. But
I mean, honestly,
DK,
if they could figure out the Eagles thing like the Eagles did and pay A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I would love it. I would love pay Metcalf his 33. If George would take 2025, kind of like what Cincinnati's doing with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, or you just franchise George Pickens, it's going to be bad. It's going to be ugly.
Yeah. Just going into the season without a contract is going to be ugly. Never mind if you go that route and then franchise him on top of it next season. He's going to be miserable and make everybody else miserable.
But theoretically, I would love it. I'd be all about it. But I just don't think you can mesh those personalities together. I just see it going very badly. And because I'm such a George Pickens fan, I mean, yes, if we were going to pay 30 and 20, I'd be all about it. Or if even 30 and 25, I'd be all about it. But
yeah, I don't think he can get 30 million like
no, DK. I think he'll get 20 to 25 though in the open market.
Maybe. I mean, I keep hearing the compensation for him around the league. People don't want to give up draft picks for George Pickens. Some of the podcasts I listen to, like Jeremiah and some of the other ones, like, what are the Steelers going to get, a 4th or 5th round pick for George Pickens? Because he's only got 1 year left on his contract, and he's shown to be a pain in the neck. So at that point, just keep him and just put up with it. I don't know. Give him a raise for this year. Give him a 1 year, $20 million deal and say sayonara.
Oh, if I thought he would take it, I would go offer him the Deontay Johnson deal, 2 for 36, and I will guarantee.
I would do that.
Well, and see if he'll take it and say, hey, look, George, you're only going to make $2 million this year. Like, how about we give you 18 this year?
That's a great idea, Bob. offer him 2 years, pretty good money, and see if we can get through the next 2 seasons. And maybe he changes. Maybe he grows up in those 2 years, and you want to sign him long term.
And just say, hey, look, you'll still be young. I mean, 2 years from now, you'll still be young, and you go out and break the bank if we can't afford you.
I like that idea. All right, let's get back to the risers. Maxwell Harrison, he killed the combine. No surprise there. I don't know if the Steelers are going to be in for cornerback in round 1. I think now that they have signed a couple guys, that they're out of cornerback in round 1. Your guy Jaden Higgins, I like him too. He's not going to be around for the Steelers between rounds 1 and 3. So I think with that trade, we've sealed him off. Jalen Noel's interesting. He's going to be like a slot receiver. I like that a lot. He might be around in the 3rd round. Maybe.
I would be a little surprised if he lasted all the way into the 80s. I think he'll be late 2nd round.
And then Trey Amos, the cornerback, again, he's a 2nd round guy. Steelers don't have a 2nd round pick, so
started off the draft process. He was the 2nd rated cornerback. Then for some reason just fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden everybody's remembering, hey, when they're watching the tape, hey, this guy's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, I think they were concerned about his speed, and he ran a 4.4, so that kind of erased all the speed stuff, and now he's bounced back.
Yeah.
The followers, real quick, Shadur Sanders, depending on who you read, he'd go anywhere from 3 to the 2nd round at this point. You know, people, the opinions on him are so mixed. He's going to be the most fascinating guy in the draft to see where he goes. I know Bob loves him.
Yep.
I'm at the point now where if he makes it to 21, how do you pass on him? Honestly, you need a quarterback so bad. I don't love the Sanders thing. I think his father's going to be a pain in the ass, you know, with contracts and attention and all that bullshit. There's a whole thing of baggage. And I think that might be pushing him down too. That people are like, do I really want to deal with his father every time the contract comes up? And, you know.
Well, luckily with the 1st round pick, I mean, it's kind of slotted.
Yeah,
you make what you
it's slotted, but then still, you can still argue over guaranteed money and all that crap, and it can get ugly.
Cause Joey Porter Jr. possibly to fall out of the 1st round.
Yeah. The other followers are Tyler Booker, who's a guard, who I don't think the Steelers would draft or consider in the 1st round, and Caleb Johnson, who I still think is a good back, but his 40 time killed him. I don't know when Iowa's pro day. If he could get back into the 4.4s, he might get himself back in the conference. But he was so far off. It was 4.5, almost 4.6, right? That he ran.
Yeah, 4.57.
Yeah, so I don't know if he can get back
interesting
into the 4.4s.
to see what happens with him. And if he did, then you also get the skepticism of a hand time pro day versus the combine. I mean, if he goes 4.49, okay, wait a minute. Now, if he runs low 4.4s, okay, maybe he's mid 4.4s, and it was just a bad day at the combine.
Which is possible.
There's a lot to like about Caleb Johnson's tape, but that 40 time, we've seen this show. Big slow running back. Nope, not interested.
He doesn't look that slow on tape, though. When you watch him, he doesn't look like a 4 or 5 guy. I had people on Twitter that I respect saying, "Oh, was he going to run the 2nd fastest 40 time out of the running backs?" I'm like, he wasn't even close. Or you want to bring up the whole list of Todd McShay, and we'll kind of run through it quick. Now, these are the skill position guys, just to keep in mind. We didn't do everything.
And I did list Travis Hunter as a wide receiver slash. I know he's basically listed as a corner. I think he's going to be an outstanding quarter, but don't get it twisted. He's going to play wide receiver in the NFL.
We're going to do both, but I think he's going to be primarily a cornerback so they can use him as both. Because if you're just a wide receiver, it's tough to plug him in at cornerback, you know, on just certain plays. But if you're a cornerback, it's easy to give him a package at wide receiver. And then, so that's the path he'll go through. Let's see, top 10 we'll do top 11. He's got Hampton 11th, which sounds about right. I don't know. I've watched Colston Loveland. I don't see him as a top 10 talent. Do you?
Who? Well, okay. So I don't see any of these tight ends this high. I mean, you look at there's 11 D7 tight ends in Daniel Jeremiah and Todd McShay's mock drafts, and I still don't see the guy I like in the middle rounds. I don't think he's necessarily better than like these top guys, but Fedone from Nebraska is a guy I like, and I think we can get him in the 5th or 6th round. But I don't get it. I mean, I know you love Tyler Warren. I don't see a huge difference between Tyler Warren and Loveland. And then some of these other guys, Mason Taylor and Terrence Ferguson, Harold Fannin Jr., I was like, come on, man. Why are these guys top 100? Is it really that bad of a draft? Do you think you're going to have 10
It's partly
generational
that.
tight ends?
It's partly that. I think Mason Taylor's, and we'll get to my top 10 and your top 10 in a minute. I like Mason Taylor a little bit. Unfortunately, I think he falls in that void of the second round, early third that we're not going to have. So, but I like Mason Taylor a little bit. I'm surprised Matthew Golden's not in this top 10 because I think I would have him a top 10 player in this draft now. I really would. I think that speed that you know is there if you need it. You didn't always see it on tape, but you know it's there. And that route running, it's just ridiculous. He's the best running back, wide receiver in this draft, as far as I'm concerned. I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, I think Hampton's better than Genty. I just do. I the ball security really scares me with Genty. Don't get me wrong. If he was sitting there in like the late 20s, high 30s, and we had traded back, I don't hate the idea of bringing him in. But if I'm going to bring in one back to be my lead back, because if you take him in the first round, Jaylen Warren is, and no matter who you take, it's 60-40 with Jaylen Warren. And now maybe even, 55, 35 and 10
with Gainwell. Yep.
I just think O'Marion Hampton, he didn't fumble once in college. And as far as I'm concerned, he played better competition. Overall, yes, Boise State made the playoffs. I get it. But how do you do in the playoffs? He fumbled twice. I would take him. I wouldn't drop, and he's definitely in the top tier. I just like Hampton a little better than him. And if I was going to go, if I was going to go 21, I'd go Hampton. I don't want to pick a running back in the first round, but if I was going to do it, it would be Hampton.
The one knock that I see with Ashton Genty, which is legit, is his touches in college. Ridiculous. He was their offense. He got used a lot, and you might be buying like a used car with a lot of miles on it that could come to bite you in years 2 and 3 with him. He was their entire offense. So I don't have his touches in front of me, but he led the nation in touches, I think, 2 years in a row. When you combine, handoffs and receptions and everything else. So there's a lot of miles on that play. That's the one thing that would scare me. Let's go 15 through 30 because Golden was 15. Shedeur Sanders, Tet McMillan. I think Tet McMillan at this point, Bob, he's the same as DK and George Pickens. I don't think you bring another tall. I think that ship has sailed. I don't think the Steelers would go that route. Egbuka was still waiting for his 40 time at his pro day. If he runs 4.4 with all the other things that he does well, route running, he's a blocker. People love the way he blocks in the run game. He could shoot up. He could easily be the pick. Well, we talked about wide receiver might not be 21, but he'd be in a mix. Jaden Higgins, you love a lot. I like too. And then Todd McShay throws us a curveball, and he's got Jackson Dart and Tyler Show, 31 and 32 on his list. I listen to his podcast every week. He is absolutely convinced that both of these guys go in the first round. From what he's hearing, I mean, if you listen to his podcast, he's had general managers on already. He's had Baltimore's general manager. He's had a couple other ones. He is wired in. He talks to these. And I get that sometimes they use these guys for smoke to distract everyone else of what they're doing, but he's hearing it. So I'm going to take him for what it's worth that, man, I think these two guys could go in the first round. If not from the teams at the bottom, the teams at the top of the first round that passed on quarterback might want to trade back in. Tennessee, the Giants miss out on somebody, New Orleans, maybe they trade up.
Yeah, we were talking about this earlier. I just get this vibe that it's the Kenny Pickett draft all over again. You got all these mid guys who now all of a sudden are getting first round buzz who, let's face it, there's issues as far as I'm concerned with every quarterback from 3 through 10, and throw them all in a hat, pick them in the fourth round, and I'm happy with any of them. I know some people are saying second and third, but if you remember back to that Kenny Pickett draft, Malik Willis was going to go in the first. Matt Corral was going to go in the first. Desmond Ridder was going to go in the late first. And all of a sudden, these guys drop to the third round. It's because they're all have a little bit of a flaw to their game. Tyler Shuck is 84 years old. Jackson Dart comes from the Lane Kiffin, one read, got to see it, throw it system. That's not It has not translated for any Lane Kiffin quarterback in the NFL. I think Dart, if he went to like McVay or Mike McDaniel or somebody like that who kind of needs a quarterback but can afford to let him sit, he could work. He goes to the Steelers, you're going to hate him. I promise you, you're going to hate him because he's not good enough to step out on the field and play. And I guarantee you, if they draft Jackson Dart, they'll start him over Mason Rudolph game one. And by the end of the first year, we'll be going, well, at least we're going to get Arch Manning. But now you're committed to a first-round quarterback's contract. So it's not that I hate the kid. I like the kid. He's got potential. I just don't like him in the first round. I don't like him in the second round either. But I know a lot of people do. There's a lot of people who are, as far as I'm concerned, overvaluing him. I don't know. I don't get it with any of these quarterbacks. I mean, honestly, you could tell me right now, we got Kyle McCord in the 5th round. I'd be perfectly happy.
Yeah, you're wasting a pick. You're wasting a pick at that point. It's just another Mason Rudolph. You're wasting your pick.
Well, bear in mind, Carson Palmer's brother, Jordan Palmer, said on the Eisen show he thinks Kyle McCord is the best quarterback in his draft. And when his quarterback testing, he said McCord tested off the charts, best quarterback in years.
Yeah, I don't know if I buy that. But, nothing would surprise me. I think you're selling Jackson Dart way short. I think the Lane Kiffin offense is shotgun, read options, get rid of the ball quick. But there is plays on his tape where he goes through progressions quickly and gets the ball out, makes some plays. He's athletic as hell. He can run around. He's probably the second or third best athletic. He's better athletically than Shedeur Sanders. He runs faster. He's better.
Yeah,
I do agree, though.
Passer. Yeah.
What's that?
Sanders is the pocket passer.
I do agree Pittsburgh is not the best landing spot for him. We've done nothing, and I mean nothing, to prove that we can develop quarterbacks here. So part of me still thinks Jackson Dart could succeed here, but it's an uphill battle. So while we disagree on the player, we both agree, and this isn't the spot for a quarterback who might need a little help. This is not it. That's why when I say if Shedeur Sanders falls, he's more pro style ready quarterback. And he still needs help though. He holds the ball too long. He tries to play hero ball. And there's the question of, can the Steelers coach him out of that? Which I have my doubts, quarterback for the Steelers, I don't know.
Our new man, Jamal here. Hey, you're 2 out of 3 as far as I'm concerned. I love Pickens too. My only concern is he might not work. And my man, you're talking my language. I love Broderick Jones. I love me some Broderick Jones. I've been railing about him not playing left tackle for a year now on the podcast. So yeah, but the Jalen Milroe take. I've seen the Anthony Richardson show, and Jalen Milroe is the discount version of Anthony Richardson.
All right, let's do 40 through. Let's go through 72 or so. Mason Taylor, Luther Burden, Quishon Judkins. I love. I would not mind being. I could even see him as a first round pick, to be honest. Elijah Arroyo, good receiver, not a great athlete. Caleb Johnson, we talked about. Trey Harris is interesting. Jack Beck. Both those guys are kind of meh to me. Terrence Ferguson, RJ Harvey is a back we haven't talked about much. Not bad. Harold Finn Jr. Again, great receiver, athletically, pretty bad. He really tested bad. And then there's Jalen Milroe. Let's just do the rest of them. Jalen Royals, I don't love. Do you like Jalen Royals? He's okay.
He's okay. Yeah. He's in my top 10 receivers, but I got 6 or 7 guys I would pick.
Yeah. Dylan Sampson, we both love. He's going to be higher than that for his pro day. Gunnar Helm, tight end again. Savion Williams, super interesting. Running back / wide receiver / whatever you want to do with Savion Williams. He's super interesting. And DJ Giddens, you guys know, is my guy. So, and of that list, who stands out? Luther Burden.
I cannot believe he's falling. I understand if you look at the tape, and especially if you're if you're a Steelers talent evaluator, I'd watch his tape and throw it away, because as good and talented as he is, and he actually might be the best wide receiver in the draft, he's takes those plays off. You get a little bit of a prima
There's red flags
donna
with him.
reputation, and
Yeah.
and honestly, you got a better version with George Pickens now. So if you're going to go the prima donna receiver route, figure out a way to make George Pickens happy, because I'd rather have Pickens over Burton. I also see him as a little bit different skill set than DK, but still a little too similar. The reason I like Golden and Jaden Higgins, even though Higgins is a big receiver, is Higgins makes his living over the middle of the field. He's a great route runner, and that's why I've been on him since the beginning. When he ran that combine time in the 4.4s, I was like, that's it. We probably can't get him. I was hoping for high 4.4s, and he was kind of like close to 4.45 with the 4.47. I think 4.49, maybe we still get him. But, I like a route runner guy like that. So, I mean, if I'm going wide receiver in the later rounds, the guy I love is Torrey Horton, which we'll get to in a minute. I kind of like him over Royals. Honestly, I'm starting to go down on Savion Williams. I would still, if he's around in the third round, and he's the best left, wouldn't hate it. But he's too much of a Deebo Samuel to me. And just like when we were talking about trading for Deebo, I don't see where he would fit in the Arthur Smith offense, because they damn sure ain't going to use him right.
Well, this is the problem. He ran 4.4 in the 4.4s, which is impressive at his size. Yeah. He's a gadget guy at first. He's not a great route runner right now. He could improve at it. I don't know if he'll ever be great. He's not that guy. He's a gadget guy. He played, quarterback sometimes as a running quarterback. He played a little bit of running back. They threw a lot of screens and bubble screens to him. That's the kind of weapon he is. I think Arthur Smith might have fun with him. Yeah. But then again, this running back room is going to be crowded, so you can't use him there. A big slot, maybe that type of thing. Have some fun with that. I wouldn't rule it out completely. I think he's a super interesting guy.
Oh no, if he was around in the fourth round, I definitely wouldn't hate the pick. I wouldn't necessarily hate the pick in the third round either.
Yeah, third round wouldn't bother me.
Yeah, I'd be scared that we'd have this awesome unicorn talent that we just have no clue how to use.
Yeah, same. All right, you want to get to our top 10s?
Yeah, let's drop into that. So a little crossover, but yeah,
you want to do yours first, or you want to do 3 or 4 at a time? How do you want to hit this?
Yeah. Why don't we do who we think in the first round and who we think is our later round targets?
All right. For first round, for my list, obviously Matthew Golden and Omarion Hampton are pretty much first round locks. Well, yeah, Hampton is a first round lock too, I would say. The rest of my guys, Abuka could go first round, especially if he runs the good 40. Quishon Junkins, maybe, but I doubt it. I think too many running backs. He goes second. And then Jackson Dart. What happens? Does somebody trade in to get him? Does somebody get desperate? It's possible, man. Of my top guys, even though we've got the 2 wide receivers, Matthew Golden would make me so happy. Would make me so happy, Bob, because he's the kind of guy you could play in the slot with these 2 other guys. He's the route runner. He's the guy that can beat man coverage, get open. I think if they were committed to a 3 wide receiver set, this offense would be so much fun. Depending on the quarterback, obviously. If it's Mason Rudolph, I don't know. But if it's, you just think of a wide receiver room, DK Metcalf, Matthew Golden, and George Pickens. Holy shit! Now we're talking. Talking.
Yeah, I like Golden. He's definitely in the top, near the top of my list. If I was going to go running back in the first round in an impact player, let's say that somewhere around July 15th, my birthday, Aaron Rodgers decides to sign, then maybe you could draft Omarion Hampton in the first round, and I think it'd be a really interesting pick with as much as they want to run the ball. Shador, to me, if he falls to 21, you can't pass him. I don't care who else is on the board. You cannot pass Shador Sanders at 21. Now, that being said, I do think he will go before the Steelers. I don't think he'll fall that far, but I can't see how you can pass him. Now, if we trade back a little bit And I think Buffalo is an ideal trade candidate. If Matthew Golden's still on the board, I wouldn't be surprised if Buffalo tries to come up and get him. And if that's the case, maybe you can weasel the 30th pick and the 56th pick out of them for that. Get your second back, trade back in the first. Then, as far as I'm concerned, Jaden Higgins is in play. He's my number one wide receiver. He has been the whole process. I love a 6'4" guy who's faster than expected. He's not a go ball guy, although he can catch go balls. He's got a nice combat catch radius. He's a guy who, kind of like Juju in his last year, was running 7 to 10 yard patterns for Ben, catching first downs. He's got a little bit. If you don't lead him, you're not going to get much run after catch. But if you lead him, he's got some run after catch ability. But this is just a big solid target. It's what your tight end should be, as far as I'm concerned. But this is the guy who's got a lot of upside. Those are the only 4 guys I would pick in the first round. I love the rest of the guys on my list, but I feel like if you get a second back or a third, that's where we're going to see it.
Summer brings up a good point. As a guy we haven't talked about at all, Cam Scattervoo. I mean, I don't know how you can watch that Texas game and not come away completely impressed with that kid. He willed that team to almost winning, almost beating Texas. Not a fast guy. I don't know how a bruising back like that transitions into the NFL where everyone's big, fast, and strong, and he's not going to be able to run over people. Where do you have Scattervoo if you would ranking top 10 running back? He's got to be top 10, but
okay. So here's what I don't want in a running back. I don't want a power slow guy. If Jalen Warren was a little faster than he actually is, I might be willing to consider that 1-2 tandem with Warren as the top and a top end, and then a guy like Scatterbo. 4.62 40, man. I'm sorry, I can't do another 3 or 4 years of slow running backs plotting.
Is Scatterbo a poor man's Najee? Is that what he is?
I wouldn't even say a poor man's Najee, because remember, Najee didn't run the 40 the year they drafted him. And the rumor was that his 40 time was in the mid 4.6s. So technically Scatterbo could be faster than him.
That's insane.
Look at how fast Warren looks in comparison to Najee. Scatterbo's a bull. I mean, I get it. If you told me we got Scatterbo in the 6th round as the 3rd running back, okay, fine. As your lead back, I don't think it works in their offense. I think it'd be an interesting fit in like the Chargers offense where they run the ball constantly, where he could be the hammer. But they kind of got Najee in that region.
They got Najee. They have the hammer.
Yeah.
Summer Merritt's interesting guy. I think, if he runs 4.4, he's going to be interesting. I have to watch a little bit more of him, but you're right. That's an interesting guy too. All right, let's do our day 2-ish, day 3-ish guys. Let's see. I've said a lot about DJ Giddens. He's probably my favorite guy, one of my favorite guys in this draft. Jalen Noel, I'm really starting to like. I watched him the other day as a slot for the Steelers. I think he fits in perfectly. I really do. Quinshawn Judkins, we talked about before we got on. Some of these guys are in that void where now that the Steelers don't have a 2nd-round pick, unless they trade down, I don't think he's going to be around. He's definitely not going to be there in the 3rd. And I think it's a little too rich to draft him in the 1st, so I don't know if we'll see him. Savion Williams, we talked about. I like him. I think he might be there in the 3rd round. That'd be an interesting pick. And then Mason Taylor, I watched a little bit of him this weekend. I came away kind of impressed. Didn't put the stats up that you would think with his kind of talent.
Yeah.
It's not like Miami had a ton of options either, so that scares you a little bit. His father was an NFL player, so we know that part of it. That you know how the Steelers love bloodlines.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on Mason Taylor for that reason alone. I don't know. We'll see. Of these guys, Jalen Noel. I don't know if he makes the 3rd round. He might fall into that void too. But damn, I'd love him as a Steelers slot receiver. 25.
Yeah, I like him. I was shocked. I mean, Iowa State was good, but I mean, they should have been.
They should have been better, right?
Yeah, they should have been.
Talent.
Iowa State and South Carolina should have been undefeated playing for the national championship. I mean, I don't know what's going on with that coaching staff there, but
there's some people that would argue South Carolina should have made the playoff instead of like SMU or some of those teams that kind of were one and done. So they had a good second half.
Yeah,
They had,
based on
yeah,
their
they had a
talent.
good.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you want to do
Yeah.
your second?
I mean, Travion's kind of a borderline first rounder to me.
Yeah.
I do think he'll go in the second, and the only concern I would have about him is that we don't have a second round pick. I mean, honestly, my ideal before the trade was Grant in the first, Higgins in the second, and then maybe you get Trevion in the third. But the draft board has changed a lot. So I don't hate him. Of the two Ohio State running backs, I kind of like him a little bit better because he's already used to being a lead back. That being said, Judkins is a nice talent. I certainly wouldn't object.
Judkins was Mississippi too. Imagine if Ole Miss kept him with that team. They might have won a national championship because, man, they needed a running back in the worst way. They didn't have anything.
Yeah. And then Dylan Sampson, I really like. He was kind of expected he'd run in the 4.3s. He ended up running in the 4.4s, low 4.4s though. So
that's a fine time for him. That's a good time. That's fine.
Which might push him just far enough down where the Steelers can still get him. And if you tell me right now we're signing up for, let's say Shador and then Dylan Sampson in the third, and then the next guy on my list, Torrey Horton in the fourth. I know it's heavy skill position. We need help on the defense, but that could really set you up for the next few years. I love Torrey Horton. If I want a slot receiver in this draft, I think this kid has been a day 3 pick all along. I also love his game. I think he fits the Steelers' kind of idea of what a slot receiver should be. He's 4 feet taller than Calvin Austin, which is a high bar. But that being said, I love Torrey Horton. Damian Martinez is a backup plan on day 3. I like this kid. His tape at Oregon State was really good. In Miami, he didn't get quite as much opportunity, but he's still very effective. He's a big back. He's not fast like Hampton, but he's faster than Najee was. So if we want to get another big back, this is a kid who we could get on day 3 who I think could really help us. Basel Tootin is really interesting. I know the Steelers have had him in for a visit. He's super fast. I like him. I think he is a day 3 pick, but I think by the end of the draft process, he's day 2, and we've only got one day 2 pick right now. I don't know that we could take a flyer on him, but I do think he's going to be a very good pro.
He tested through the roof, right? The jumps, the 40 time. He's a super interesting guy. Late, day 2, day 3 guy.
Yeah, in the middle round. If we got him first pick day 3, ooh, that's a nice pick. And then the kid who's kind of starting to shoot up is Dante Thornton from Tennessee. If you know what I like, 6'5" guy who's the second fastest receiver at the combine, sign me up for that. He's got some work to do, as far as route running, but that's a bunch of natural talents. So yeah, those are the guys I like in day 2, maybe day 3 for sure, especially the bottom half of the list. If they're there on day 3, you got decisions. If
Kevin Colbert was still the Steeler general manager, I'd say Dante Thornton would be a favorite to be a Steeler because he loved those tall, fast guys. He's super interesting too. That 40 time blew everybody away at 6'5". Holy shit. You know what's occurred? Just to digress a little bit, something that occurred to me today. Could you talk the Buffalo Bills into George Pickens for their first round pick?
No.
You don't think so?
Not for the first round. I think you could get him maybe the second.
They're trying for Super Bowl. You put George Pickens with Josh Allen, he's going to a Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
Could you talk them into this is the guy that could put you over the top and get you the Super Bowl?
Well, no, and I'll tell you why. Because Josh Allen ran Stephon Diggs out of town. He does not want a diva wide receiver.
I think Stephon Diggs is a different animal.
Is he really?
Well, only because he was more established veteran, and no one could bring him. No one's bringing, and maybe no one was bringing George Pickens around either. You might be right on that, but I don't know. If I'm the Buffalo Bills and I still need a big-time wide receiver, and I'm looking at this draft, and it's like, George Pickens is better than anyone in this draft. Maybe except Golden, who's not going to be there at 28.
No, Golden. Honestly, Pickens is a top 10 talent in the league.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, I've been saying it since we drafted him. Let's face it, Ben Roethlisberger's been saying it since he drafted him. He's like, if I was under center or in the shotgun and I looked out and saw George one-on-one, I don't care what the fucking play is. The play is throw it to George Pickens.
Yeah. And that's the attraction of having someone like Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah.
who will say, I see Pickens one-on-one and I have this play call, which is, the toss. I'm not running that. I'm going to throw it. But if it's Mason Rudolph or anybody, they're not doing. They're going to run the play. They're going to run the play that's called, and that's it. So, yeah, I just thought that. Let me flip it on you. You're the Steelers general manager, and Buffalo comes to you with the 28th overall pick. Do you make the deal?
In a minute, I don't think they would, but I don't think there's any scenario because of the reputation that he has around the league. It's inarguable. If you put this guy with any offensive-minded coach, I mean, he's not quite Justin Jefferson. He's not quite Jamar
He's probably that
Chase.
tier below those two guys, the top guys.
Yeah, but you start to get into 3, 4, 5. He's kind of in the conversation. He's no worse than, as far as I'm concerned, maybe 7 overall in the league, which is still
I think 6,
awesome.
7, 8. Yeah, I agree with you. Somewhere around there. Which is, again, I know people are saying, you're not going to get anything but a day 2 pick for George Pickens. I mean, if you're one of these playoff teams that's close, and you're looking at this draft, you need a wide receiver. You're looking at this draft. I know you're gonna start at third, but when the rubber hits the road and you got a chance to win a Super Bowl like Buffalo or Kansas City, who still needs a big play guy, George Pickens.
The guy, low key, I wouldn't count this out. I haven't heard anything. This is just me making an educated guess watching 50 years of football. Justin Fields and George Pickens played together in high school. They like each other. Don't count out the Jets saying, here's our second round pick, which is pick 43 for Pickens. I could see a scenario where that unfolds. And if that's the case, and now all of a sudden we got 21 and 43, now it gets really interesting because I think you could double up at wide receiver in this draft. You get Horton on day 3. You take Higgins, Golden, or even McMillan if he falls. You take one of those 3 guys. I would still take Higgins first. And now all of a sudden you've got a really interesting wide receiver core. You're paying DK a ton of money, and you got 4 years of 2 guys on rookie contracts who are immediate, as far as I'm concerned, immediate contributors, because wide receiver is different now than it used to be. It doesn't take them 2 or 3 years to catch on. Plenty of guys have come out their rookie year. Higgins' comp is Nico Collins. If you told me right now we could have DK Metcalf and Nico Collins, sign me up all day long.
Yeah. Salma brings is a great point. Imagine Pickens with a guy like Joe Burrow. We've been saying it. It's just that's what I'm talking about. If one of these teams says, the draft's coming up, free agency's done, I'm one wide receiver away from my offense exploding. The Chiefs couldn't hit a big play to save their lives last year. That was one of their big Achilles heels. They couldn't make any big plays. You couldn't talk them into their first round pick for George Pickens. I don't want to trade George Pickens. I don't. But
they've got Xavier Worthy, and I think they're going to build.
He just got in trouble again.
Yeah, but that being said, the team that makes the most sense to me, who would take the risk because of the culture and Mike Vrabel, is the Patriots. If the Patriots threw the 69th pick to the Steelers for Pickens, I think you have.
What's 69? It's
like the 3rd or 4th pick in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. I'm holding fast for a 2nd round pick. Maybe I don't get it, and I keep him.
Yeah,
if I don't get a 2nd, I keep him. And Utah, you take that back. Take that back. Don't. How dare you say that we're the new Cowboys? Get out of here. You might be right, but still, you can't say it.
We still got 20 years of losing playoff games to go with the Cowboys, but we're on the way. Jamal Brooks.
Austin, you might not have a choice. I wouldn't want to trade him to an AFC team either, but you may not have a choice.
Let's just be honest. Some of the best wide receivers went for 3rd and 4th round picks when they got traded recently. They're not going to get a 2nd for Pickens. They're not going to get a 1st for Pickens because number one,
then you don't trade him.
Yeah, well,
then you don't trade him.
I think if it's early day 3 or 3rd round, you got to consider it based on what happens. Because I'm telling you right now, if he comes out towards training camp and it's Mason Rudolph, DK Metcalf, and George Pickens, he goes,
I know.
I'm out of here. You'll be lucky to get a 5th. And by the way, that'll be in next year's draft, not this year's draft.
And if you do trade George Pickens, you got to pray Golden makes it to you, because that's the guy that you can feel good about. Okay, if it's Golden, it's DK. I mean, I don't know if they double dip at wide receiver. I think they're happy with Calvin Austin as their third, which is terrible, but I think they are.
Let's say that you figured out how to hypnotize George Pickens and put him in a trance and make him a good soldier for this year. I mean, even with Mason Rudolph at quarterback, you can't double both of them. And if you do, then whoever you bring in at running back is going to rush for 4,000 yards. Because if you play too high safety and double DK, and you play too high safety and double George, and then the offensive line just plays competent football.
Yeah, you should be able to run the ball.
You should be able to. You're going to go against light boxes, and let's say you got a hammer like Hampton, pounding the ball in there, or even Jalen, who runs, who's a decisive runner. All of a sudden, you're pretty fucking good.
You know what the sad part of that is? The sad part of that scenario is with that scenario, with them playing two high safeties and playing back, worried about the outside guys. The middle of the field is open. That's what you should be attacking. And Tomlin does not want to attack the middle of the field. He wants no part of it. That's where a guy like Freiermuth should be open for days. You know,
or Austin on drag routes.
If you're in three wide receiver, Austin should be, or get another wide. Maybe Roman Wilson becomes that third guy.
Yeah,
God help us. But that guy should have it easy. You should have swaths of field. If this is the offense you're going to run, you should be able to run the ball without a problem, and you should be able to throw the ball in the middle of the field. Will Tomlin let them? Is the question.
Yeah, Utah must have tuned in late. We kind of talked about this. The Steelers have figured out the quarterback position twice in franchise history. They've been around 90 years, and it's kind of been by default both times. We're not going to overly revisit that, but if you have a chance, go back and watch the beginning. The Steelers organizationally for the entire history are terrible at picking quarterbacks.
And to his other point here about the wide receivers, did you watch the Steelers last year? Wide receiver was one of the top needs going into this year. So you can't kill them for actually going again. We killed them all last season for not having an answer at wide receiver. Now, if they trade George Pickens and it's the same thing again, then we can kill them after that. But for now, they've solved one of their biggest needs.
Depending on who they get. I mean, if you again, you tell me Metcalf, Higgins, and Horton, all day.
Yeah, I don't like two rookies. But we've argued that point.
We got Skoranek
Skoranek and Miller. Yeah, Skoranek and Miller. Watch my head explode right here on live YouTube. Here's a question: can we talk Dallas? They've done some dumb shit in the past. Would Dallas do it for GP?
I think Dallas. I think Dallas is going to take Membu if he's there.
When did they draft? They draft early, right? 14,
they're like
15?
I think the 12th pick.
12th pick. They wouldn't give up the 12th pick. They might give up the second round pick.
Yeah, they're definitely top 15. Membu, I think, would be the ideal Dallas draft pick. Genty, if he's there, would be an interesting get for them. I don't think if Membu
Dallas
is
12.
Gone,
you're right.
Yeah,
12.
if Membu is gone and Genty and Matthew Golden are there, I think they might go Matthew Golden to pair with CD Lamb. Texas.
They just signed a running back, didn't they? They signed a running back.
Yeah, I think they did. Yeah, I mean,
that'd be interesting.
It is Dallas. Who knows what they're going to do? But I think Membu is the pick.
If you're talking late first round, just to go over it, because I mean that's the best you can possibly hope for George Pickens is a late first round. Mm-hmm. Would Houston be interested? 25.
Oh, if they hadn't traded for Christian Kirk and restructured his contract.
Yeah, but
I mean,
Kirk's kind of a slot guy. They could still use another outside guy.
I don't.
You're not trading him to Baltimore. Detroit doesn't need him. The Rams don't need a wide receiver. Washington.
Oh yeah, Washington. I mean,
they seem to be all in.
Yeah,
they're signing all kind of aging veterans. Would they give up a first? They might. Buffalo, Kansas City, maybe, and then the Eagles don't really need a wide receiver. So that's the ones you're looking at if you could possibly get a first round pick. Washington's interesting.
I don't think they'd give up a first. They might give up their second.
They think they can win this year.
Yeah.
And you put Terry McLaurin and George Pickens with Jaden Daniels, holy shit. Maybe you could talk him into it.
Yeah, my man.
We've talked about, that Detroit's not trading him. I think they think he's the next quarterback. I really do.
I don't know. They got a lot invested in Goff, and he's not that old. And Goff, and let's be honest, Goff has played incredible for them.
He has. And he's probably around 30, right? I think so. They probably have a few more good seasons with him, maybe 31. Quarterbacks can go to 40 at this point. So,
yeah.
Utah asks about Ryan Tannehill. You're not really serious. Did he even play last year? What did Tannehill play last year?
I don't think he did. Hold on. Let's take a look.
I'm surprised they didn't look him up as a backup last year.
Yeah, Goff is 30. Well, that was the rumor, is like he brought in Cordarrelle. They thought they'd bring in Tannehill.
Yeah.
Tannehill did not play last year, so I don't know that I want him as a starter. I mean, if you got Tannehill and Mason Rudolph competing for the starting job, you kind of know what you're getting into.
Yeah, put a gun to your mouth and wait till 26 because that's where
I'd rather a rookie. I'm not high on Jackson Dart. But if you told me Jackson Dart in the third round over Tannehill, I wouldn't hate that.
Yeah, honestly, TJ, the last time they didn't have a 500 record is what brought them Ben Roethlisberger. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And one of the best drafts in Steelers history was 1987. It wasn't quite as bad as 88 when they finished in last place in the division, which is the last time they finished last. But the 87 draft brought us Rod Woodson, Greg Lloyd, Merrill Hodge. I mean, there were a lot of guys in that draft. So one season, and this is always the quibble I have. Oh, we'll riot if we have a bad season. Look, we didn't riot in 88. We had 4 or 5 bad seasons in a row. We didn't riot in the 70s when they were terrible the first 5 years under Noel. We didn't riot when Cowher lost 3 years in a row. Now, were those guys on the hot seat? Was Chuck Noll on the hot seat by the time 72 ran around? Yeah, he kind of was. And Bill Cowher was that close to getting fired. And Dan Rooney gave him a new contract and an ultimatum. You better win a fucking playoff game and get us back to the playoffs. And they went to the AFC Championship game with Cordell Stewart. And that is one of the best coaching jobs I have ever seen. Look,
if they came out and said to us, 2025 is going to be a rebuild year.
Yeah.
We're going to ride it with Mason Rudolph. We're going to try our best, but this is it. And we're going to reevaluate in 26. I don't think anybody would be mad at that.
No.
I don't think any, and if they went 6-11 with that team, but we knew, we drafted a running back or whatever in the first round, we're developing that guy. We've got the pieces in place. We got DK Metcalf. We're trying to build something. Steelers fans are not stupid. We see Buffalo and Kansas City and all these teams that are better than us that we do not have a prayer to beat in 2025. We're not dumb. People are not going to get mad, but it all comes down to Tomlin. He does not want to lose, which I get. It's a great quality in a coach, probably the best quality. But at some point, you got to be realistic and say, there isn't a quarterback here that's good enough to take us past those teams. There just isn't a guy. So we have to wait. We have to draft. And if you draft a guy in a top 10 next year, well, yes, that sets your clock back a couple of years to be competitive. Guess what? That's when, these other teams like Josh Allen and these guys are getting a little older. That's when you realistically have a chance of success. It's not going to happen in 25 and 26. We're not dumb. We know this.
And to Utah's point about Mason, hey, look, none of us are sitting there going, hey, this is not the podcast for, woo, we got Mason. Well, maybe tomorrow it will be. But no, look, as far as Mason's concerned, I put this out on X yesterday. Look, Mason is status quo. He's safe. It's got Steelers and Tomlin written all over it. If Mason is your starter, you get an excuse and you get to kick the can down the road, which is what they seem to be interested in. So, no, the only good thing you get out of Mason starting all year is if he sucks. And I think there's a better than average chance he will.
Of course,
the Mason stands go away forever. If we'd only had him instead of Ben, okay, we could put all that shit to bed. And you know what? I hope that it's the other way, where hey, all of a sudden Mason balls out and he's Geno Smith. Now we don't need a quarterback, and we can load up on even more talent.
A friend of mine said to me, I want to see if you agree with this or not. This is the Steelers' version of low-key tanking without telling anybody or without admitting it. Is they didn't really sign anybody in free agency. Are they pretend interested in Aaron Rodgers, knowing they're not going to get him, and they're going to say, well, we tried for Aaron, it's Mason, and now they have a bad year. They've got comp picks. They'll have cap space in 26. And is there any world where they're that smart, where they're that intelligent? Now. What's that?
They got cap space now. I mean, if you
but are they putting everything in 26's back, which is what this person tried to tell me. They're putting everything in 26, and they're basically, trying to fool us in 25.
You know what? It's interesting.
Are they that smart?
Let's say if you did that. Let's say if you finally said, okay, Mike, go out and try to be 9-8, man. More power to you. This is the tools. If you do it, great. Let's say Mason turns into Geno Smith. We go 12-5. We have a great year. We keep Pickens, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But if it does fall apart, I mean, then you've got Mike Tomlin going into a prove it year in the last year of his contract. Now, all of a sudden, it starts to get a little interesting of now maybe you can have the talk like Dan had with Chuck Noll and say, hey, man, I'm done with this shit. You either win a playoff game, and oh, by the way, all your coaches are fired and I'm hiring new ones. And let's face it, Chuck Noll, if you're not familiar with that period, go back and look at it. The guy he loved, the guy he wanted to be his successor, Tony Dungy, he had to fire him because Dan Rooney said, this is the Steelers. We don't not win for years on end anymore. And, Dungy went on to have a Hall of Fame career on his own. So, yeah, I think it could be interesting. And it might be, we talked about it a little bit before the show. Maybe there's trouble in paradise here. Maybe Omar wants to go a different way. Mike Tomlin wants to go a different way. Art don't give a fuck. And Omar's like, okay, Mike, you run the show. Run us into the ground because that's the only way I can get the power.
Yeah, the problem is Art. You say that he's in his 1-year contract and there's pressure on him. If Art's still the owner, he gets an extension next year. And there is no pressure.
They go 6-10.
I'd be shocked. I'd still be shocked. I'd still be shocked.
11? Yeah, but then it's the last year of a prove-it deal. And then the question becomes,
they're just going to extend it.
How much longer does Art want to really go? I mean, he's already the oldest Steelers owner of all time. So his dad and his grandfather lived longer, but they gave up control. He's already past where they gave up control.
Yeah, but it doesn't
let's face it, he wasn't a football man. So
he's shown no signs of giving up. He doesn't, he shows no signs of it. I just don't. So, I mean, short of that, I like this low key. I don't believe it. But if it's the plan, I'm all aboard. Like we'll put a decent team for you together, Mike. We'll give you DK Metcalf. Try to do your best with, Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph. But we're not going to sign anybody. We're going to hoard the comp picks. We're not going to extend ourselves too much. We're going to save some cap space for next year, and knock yourself out. 2026 the year we're going to go for it.
Yeah,
I love the idea.
I see the Russell Wilson contingent has entered the chat. I'm on record. I'd rather have Chris Boswell play quarterback than Russell Wilson. 5 years in a row, he's been bad. 5. He's not getting better this year. He has been bad. He's had little stretches where he's been okay. And somebody in that building is really pissed off at Russell Wilson.
We've gotten a lot of people have told us that he is not an option for the Steelers in 25. I'll let you guys know what I've heard. The rumor is they think he leaked the story to Dulac about him calling audibles in the Bengals game and how they went, scored 40 points and won. And then they took that away from him, and that's why they started losing. The Steelers are convinced he's the one that leaked that to Dulac, making Arthur Smith look bad, and they're pissed. And they're like, they are done with him. So keep that in mind when you say bring Russ back. I think Russ is the absolute last option. And I don't even know if it's an option. I think Mason Rudolph's the last option.
I think if Mason gets hurt, I'd rather go with Mason. I really would. And anybody who has followed my writing and the podcast knows I am not a Mason Rudolph fan, but I'd rather go with Mason.
I think if Mason Rudolph is the starting quarterback, we're in for a world of hurt. Because I think DK Metcalf and if George Pickens is still here, they start getting pissed off because they're not getting the ball enough. And I think this thing gets bad.
But if you told me Mason was going to, let's say we got lucky and Shador fell. If you told me Mason was the bridge to Shador, that's the only thing I think would be good. And then we load up on free agents and draft picks with a guy on a rookie contract. He's the only guy I could see us getting where we could advance this plan a year. Where we'd take Shador, we'd build around him. The guys next year. Yeah, I love Arch Manning. I would love to get Arch Manning, but we're gonna have to go 1-16 to get him. I
looked at the list the other day. There's some quarterbacks. The Tennessee kid, who's like 6'5" and supposed to be really good.
Not bad.
The Penn State kid. I don't know how you feel. Yeah, some people like him a lot. And there's a few others. So it's a pretty deep quarterback class next year. If you're going quarterback hunting, that's the year to do it, not this year. One last thing before we go, I'll leave you with this. A couple people have said Arthur Smith loves Tyler Shuck. Yeah, Nico. Well, I'm not even going to attempt his last name, but that's the Tennessee kid. I've heard it. I've read it a couple of different places where Arthur Smith loves Tyler Shuck. So keep that in mind. And if they want Tyler Shuck, they either have to trade back and take him late in the first round, or try to get an early second round pick because he's not lasted until the back end of the third round, which is where they draft. So keep that in the back of your mind. He's coming into Pittsburgh for a visit. They met with him at the Combine. There's a lot of tea leaves. I don't know when Louisville's pro day is, but if Tomlin should happen to show up there, I'd start getting nervous that Tyler Shuck is going to be picked 21 or trade back to 28, and watch out.
Yeah, and just a couple of announcements. I know we're all distraught about the Steelers quarterback situation. March Madness is starting, so Uber has a thing where you can win $100,000. But I also created a Steelers Sanctuary league on here. If you guys sign up and participate with us, as long as we get at least 15 entrants, we're going to give away a Steelers Sanctuary cup. It's a double wall, nice 20-ounce cup for whoever wins our individual league. And you might, who knows, you might win $100,000. It's free.
Awesome.
And
going forward, go ahead, Bob, finish up.
Oh no, I was going to say, that we have a merch store. If you scan the QR code in the top of the screen, or just Google Steelers Sanctuary merchandise, it's through the Blue Source of Jacks. We've got our Hall of Fame Herbig shirts. We got our Uncle Aaron shirts, and then we've got some cups and some Steelers Sanctuary shirts as well. Feel free to support the podcast by buying in. And then on Tuesday, I'll be back with my mock draft, but we'll be back tomorrow, right?
Yeah, we're back tomorrow at 6:30, 7 o'clock. We haven't nailed down that time yet. Next, we're going to go forward with this every Sunday till the draft. 5 p.m. is going to be our normal time. You think, right, Bob? We had to do 1 o'clock this week.
Yeah, this was just a one-off.
This is a one-off, 5 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to have a lot of fun with this. We'll keep going through. We'll keep you up to date on the visits, the pro day visits. We'll keep you up on the top 30 that have visited the Steelers. That goes a long way into determining where the Steelers pick. As far as the draft itself, guys, if you love the draft, we're going to be live 1, 2, and 3, right, Bob? We're going to do live right through.
Yeah, we're going to try.
Even though the Steelers don't have a second round pick, they'll still have a third round pick on day 2. So we'll be live throughout all those. We're going to have a lot of guests. We're going to have some fun. Stick with the Steelers Sanctuary if you want draft stuff. Bob's got a profile every day. If you haven't read his profiles on Steelers Sanctuary, listen to him. Yeah. You got to check it out. He does a mock draft every Tuesday. I do a mock draft on my site, Steelers Sanctuary, every 2 weeks ish. I'll wait a little bit longer for the pro days to come out. We've got you covered.
Yeah, we've got some interesting changes that we're working on. Where you guys who are awesome in chat, we appreciate your chats, but we're going to have a way where we can get you on air live to give your takes, and that we're working on it. That's coming. Hopefully, we'll have it by draft night. If not, it will be soon after. Definitely before the season starts, we'll have it up and running. But yeah, a lot of exciting changes. Oh, and don't forget, while we're streaming the draft, we haven't put this out yet. We're still working on the details. We are going to have a draft contest. Our own David came up with this. It's a really cool game. We've just got to figure out how to format it so you guys can sign up and get on there. But same thing, we'll be giving away some free merch on draft night to whoever wins the game.
Bob, we got to work on this. We promised this a couple of times. Me and you doing a live mock together.
Let's do it next week.
I was going to say a Sunday would be perfect. Maybe we'll do it next Sunday. We'll be our live mock. You guys can jump on with us, unless there's any crazy news that distracts us from. Yeah, we'll try to do a live mock next Sunday, 5 p.m. Get on board for that. Guys, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. That helps us out tremendously. Hit the like button on YouTube. Keep this going. This ball's been rolling great. We want to keep it going. And thanks for listening, guys, in the chat. Thanks a lot. We appreciate that. Keep sending those messages after on the chat if you want to. That helps out the algorithm as well. Thanks for listening to Steelers Sanctuary Podcast Draft Spotlight.
Ain't nothing over till it's over.
What's that from, the 80s?
It's probably the 70s.
This is disappointing as hell.
Now what the fuck are we supposed to do?
Yo, come back now, you hear?
Probably worth the Google.
Saw that coming.